Number one, though, Dawn, for everyone, it seems like, and it seems the consensus LB1 in this draft, and the only guy who's going to be a first-round pick at linebacker in this year's draft is Jihaad Campbell from Alabama, who is a phenomenal football player overall. He's an athletic freak. He is the most athletic linebacker that we have in this draft. 98th percentile GAS score, 98th percentile in terms of his relative athletic score as well. He hit over 21 miles an hour in our player tracking data this past season. He ran a 4.52 in the 40-yard dash. That is the 92nd percentile for linebackers. 80 coverage grade, 81 run defense grade, 76 pass rushing grade this past year. He's one of the few linebackers in the country who had 75-plus grades in coverage, pass rushing, and run defense. Like I mentioned before, today's day and age of linebacker, got to be able to do all three. Campbell showed he could do all three at Alabama this past year. Great size, too, at 6'3" with 32.5-inch arms. Now, I still think the one weakness I found with him, still thinking the game a little bit too much. His game kind of lacks anticipation right now. He's a little bit step behind, but all the athletic traits, all the production you look for in a potential first-round pick at linebacker. He could play anywhere from the Mike to the Sam to the Will spot. All pro upside if he could develop his feel for the game a little bit more. So again, he's got to get a little more experience under his belt, but this guy's a Pro Bowl caliber player because of how athletic he is and how good he was at Alabama this past year.
Yeah, the more you watch him, the clearer it is that he's the best linebacker in this class. I'm even looking right now, I just noticed in my strengths and weaknesses column here, and the weaknesses, I really don't have anything that has to do with his physical ability.
Yeah.
When we talked at the top of the show about there's not that many two-way linebackers, every down linebackers who can do it all, Campbell has at least the potential to be able to do it all. I'm not sure that I would take him, I know there's been some talk, is it the Panthers or Saints at 8 or 9, maybe the Cowboys at 12. I think in a vacuum I might be a little more comfortable somewhere between, say, 15 and 25 or 26.
It feels like he's not getting past Tampa Bay at 19.
Tampa Bay at 19 would be perfect. I mean, and especially to have a guy like Levante David teach him the things to fill in the gaps there and bridge into that next generation for the Bucs defense, that would be perfect. I don't know if he gets that far because I think it's possible he goes as high to, say, the Cowboys at 12. I think I could see that too. But you talk about speed. You talk about a guy who can get around blockers, quick hands, quick shoulders to dip through them, good tackler. And I think, you mentioned the coverage ability. On passing downs, there's three things a linebacker can do. He can sit back and cover, he can rush the passer, or he can spy. He can play a spy. This guy can do all three.
Yeah.
You could put him in any of those three roles, and he's got the athleticism to make it happen. And I think
long arms to bat down passes too.
And the long arms, the batted down passes, the ability to cut off those zone windows, and he uses that length even to get off blockers too. Yeah. You're absolutely right. You can line him up off the edge. This is someone who has the ability to do everything. Again, you mentioned it. What's the one hole in his game, which I think got a little bit better this past year, better than it was his first 2 years. There was times his first 2 years where I'm not sure he knew what he was looking at, okay? Yeah. Now you're talking about, okay, I just need processing. That's all I need is processing and processing speed, right? I think he's still figuring out sometimes, what to do and how to handle pullers in action, right? Plays when you're talking about whether he's on the front side and trying to find and engage a puller, or he's on the back side and he has to read him right off the snap, pull the trigger a little quicker. And the fun part with Campbell is even if he's a half step behind, he can still get ahead because he's so darn fast, right? The speed plays on tape, even just, again, eye discipline and feel in coverage more than some inability to do it. He is able to do everything a linebacker needs to do in the NFL at that level. When you talk about, right now, I would say Fred Warner is the standard, right? And Fred Warner, both physically and mentally, is able to do everything you ask him to do. And he does it because he's a veteran. He's worked through the kinks early in his career, and now he's arguably the smartest linebacker in football, right? If Campbell can get to that point mentally, which is why you mentioned it, it would be so much fun to watch him on a team like Tampa Bay to learn those things from Levante David or an experienced linebacker. I'm trying to think of another. I mean, even like you have other places like Cincinnati, right? Playing alongside Logan Wilson, who's done it for a while, right? I think you talk about getting him to play with somebody like that who knows the game, he's been around it a while. Man, you're talking about Campbell, easily the highest ceiling of anybody at this position in this class. The most physically able to do things any way you want them. In run defense, in coverage, as a pass rusher. Again, I'm not sure how high he'll go. Even, you know what, we mentioned it before. I don't know that he would go 9 to the Saints. That's high. That's high for any linebacker. That's Luke Kuechly territory, right? But same thing. The idea of putting him next to Demario Davis for a year or two and having him learn there when this is a guy who all he really needs to do is improve the coachable things and the mental side of things. Well, having a guy like DeMario or Levante David, that would help. So Campbell, the more you watch this group, it's easiest to see he's got the highest ceiling of any of them. I think he's the one who you sit there and you go, I don't have limitations as far as what I'm asking him to do. He just needs to, in the first year or two, he just needs to be taught properly and speed up the process a little bit more at NFL speed. And 2 years from now, you're right, he could be an All-Pro.
It feels like he's head and shoulders above this linebacker class right now. If you look at the consensus board, Jihaad Campbell's ranking is number 17 on the consensus board. The next closest linebacker is triple that at 51 overall. So there's not even another linebacker in the top 50, and he's a top 20 player on the consensus board. So I think Jihaad Campbell, I think his floor in the draft at this point is Tampa Bay at 19. I don't know if he's getting past that.
I'm trying to think of other teams just in that if Tampa Bay were for any reason.
I think Arizona maybe at 16 could be interested. Yeah.
Arizona. I mean, I'll just look at the run of teams right now, just in theory, right? Carolina at 8, New Orleans at 9, San Fran at 11. I don't think we could take it off the table.
That would be
right.
Awesome.
I know we've talked
all. They lost Dre Greenlaw.
If you got him with Warner, I'm sure Robert Saleh would have fun. Dallas. Even Indianapolis, I think, would be a thought. There's so many. If he got by all those teams and Tampa Bay, then I still think you're talking about even Denver with the next pick at 20 might do it. I know they just signed Greenlaw, ironically enough. So it's like, just so many teams. The Rams, heaven forbid he ever got to the Rams at 26, or if they were to trade up for him, that would seal up their defense. I'd be like, oh, this team might really go to the Super Bowl. Okay, but no, I think he's going top 20. He's the one linebacker that I'm confident is going in the first round, and probably inside the top 20 is a lot of good fits for him because, again, this is arguably the scarcest position in the NFL right now. There's just not that many superstar linebackers. I mean, we're talking about, I would argue, Bobby Wagner at 35, 36 years old is still one of the top 5 in the league. I mean, that's where we're at with linebackers right now. So he's the one guy, when you have a linebacker that is of that level that could play all three ways like that, I don't see another linebacker in this class like him.
No.
And I think that's the part where you go, okay, if he's a superstar in the middle of this defense, that's a game changer. You saw what the change at linebacker did for the Eagles this year. They won a Super Bowl. Zach Bond comes in, animal, Nakobe Dean, big improvement, even Oren Burks behind him. Those guys can still make an impact if they're this good.
Yeah, Jihaad Campbell was so productive in the SEC as a run defender in coverage and as a pass rusher, and he's the best athlete at linebacker in this year's draft as well, which makes him easily the number 1 linebacker in the 2025 NFL Draft. Hey, thanks for watching another episode of the PFF College Football Show. Please make sure you guys subscribe to the channel.
Also, subscribe to PFF Plus at subscribe.pff.com for all of the same data and grades that we use in our show, plus fantasy tools, betting tools, and our mock draft simulator.